Oh, yeah, and that lovely feeling that you have inside is because China has released a report today. The report is 84 pages long, and it says, among other things, we're awesome. It says nothing to see here when it comes to the virus. We stopped this thing in its tracks. The most comprehensive account so far that Beijing has used, a document to deny criticisms that it had destroyed or even sought to cover up the disease in its initial actions. I mean, sure, you know, the arrest of the doctor, the boarding up of people, the domestic flights able to come to be stopped out of Wuhan, but the rest of the world getting exported the virus, that's fine. The fact that there is no delay or cover-up whatsoever by the Chinese government, says this highly independent person. And of course the world media reports this. At the same time, they continue more threats and sanctions against Australia. Rowan Dean, do you feel better that the Chinese have let the Chinese off the hook?
Yeah, Paul, it's pretty funny, isn't it? You know, the Chinese have, they managed, I think they destroyed the original virus samples. They jailed or bullied the guy who actually originally came out and warned people that there was this virus on the loose. He had to recant in classic communist style, in totalitarian style. He had to atone for that. And then later on, mysteriously, he died. And of course, yeah, that would have been the virus, I guess. You know, China has so much to answer for this. Let's not forget that they were so concerned about the virus that they shut the borders out of Wuhan, out of the province of Hubei, shut all the borders so that nobody could go and take the virus into the rest of China. But they kept the international airports open at the time of the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, when they knew literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of Chinese would fly around the world to go and celebrate Chinese New Year with the Chinese diaspora around the world. So, seriously, to put this, I mean, this is one of those reports that is probably there for comic value and little else.
Also good to know today that in the news poll, which showed very strong support for the Prime Minister on the issue of China, Australians, unsurprisingly, are absolutely with him. A survey of 1,512 Australians showed 59% supporting the prioritising of relations with the United States. Only 29%, which of course is dominated by Greens voters, were pushing closer ties with Beijing. Any surprise there? But of course, the way that China works is that China will often make some sort of big statement like they did, freeing themselves about any sort of culpability for the virus, and then at the same time they start to exact revenge on Australia. Remember, let's have the inquiry into the virus. Exactly the same day is when the threats were being put and the tariff was put against those Australian barley farmers. Well, it's happening again. We learned today in China's Global Times, the not-free propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party today, that they have blasted the unfair attitude that Australians have towards China. And they say that if Australia wants to retain the gain from its economic ties with China, it must take a real change in its current stance to China or completely lose the benefits of Chinese consumers. Tourism loss may just be the tip of the iceberg. Jenna Clark in WA, music to Mark McGowan's ears, which is, threat, must bend, must bend.
Yeah, you could call us a bit of an outpost of the CCP, but I wouldn't go that far. But I know a lot of West Australians definitely echo the sentiments of Prime Minister Scott Morrison in putting Australia's interests first. I think the Premier here, he's a Labor Premier, and this is probably where his opinion differs from the Prime Minister's. That's understandable, as he's been banging on for a number of weeks for all of us to cool our rhetoric when it comes to dealing with China, because obviously iron ore, the stuff that we dig and ship offshore to China, is our biggest export and basically keeps us all in jobs over here. So I think while the local government here is scrambling to find a diversification of markets and new industries to fire up and branch out to places like India and Indonesia, which are not going to happen overnight, but it could happen in about 10 years, I think we're all trying to be told to cool our jets when it comes to talking out about China.